ay rated PG. Patnubay at gabay ng magulang ay kailangan sa mga batang manonood.
The world has been changing and continuously progressing in many factors. The Philippines, as part of the third world countries, holds a lot of pressure in order to provide the needs of its people. And one of its major components is education. The education system in the Philippines is gradually improving throughout the years. Numerous schools and universities are competing internationally to prove that Filipinos can contend and prove their skills. However, these competencies vary, and it is important to consider the guide of every institution to execute an effective learning system. And that is the curriculum.
Change is the only permanent in life. And so, as our curriculum that has been developing since pre-colonial period. Como estas fue la educación durante la época española. As our country was a target of colonization under Spaniards, we experienced and acquired their ways and goals of teaching us their styles of education, and its remnants had adverse effects in today's curriculum development.
When Spain began to colonize the Philippines, the Spanish missionaries played a major role as to how the Filipinos were educated and controlled. Religion was the tool Spain wielded to make the Philippines its colony. The Philippine curriculum then was a lot more structured compared to what the Filipinos had before the Spaniards came. However, the emphasis of the Spanish-taught curriculum was more on religion rather than the basic literate skills, science, and arts. The Spanish missionaries established schools soon after reaching the islands and a few decades into the Spanish period. There was no Christian village without its school, with most children attending. Filipino women was given elevated position and respected by men, though they have limited freedom in engaging professions, studies, and to socialize freely with men. Most of them enter exclusive schools for women, while those who don't have intention to marry enters convent, just like the famous character Maria Clara. Education in the Philippines during Spanish era had undergone several stages of development to meet the needs of the society. Pre-colonial times were influenced by economic situations, and education was not institutionalized until the coming of the Spanish missionaries, who used education as a tool and a propagation of religion using the Roman alphabet, replacing the baybayin of the natives. Education was inadequate, oppressed, and controlled, limited only to the elites, and manifested social inequality and women's subordination. The Augustinians opened a school in Cebu in 1565. The Franciscans in 1577, who immediately took the test of teaching improving literacy aside from the teaching of both agricultural and industrial techniques. The Jesuits followed in 1581 and by the Dominicans in 1587, who started their first mission in Bataan. In 1590, the Universidad de San Ignacio was founded in Manila by the Jesuits. It is headed by Father Antonio Cedeño, who is the first Jesuit superior in the Philippines.
The University of Santo Tomas, established in 1611 as the Colegio de Nuestra Señora de Santísimo Rosario, is generally recognized as the oldest university in the Philippines. Other renowned schools today that are built from Spanish era are Ateneo de Manila University and Colegio de San Juan Letran in Manila.
In 1590, the Philippines printed its first book. It is a Chinese language version of the Doctrina Christiana or Christian doctrine. Spanish and Tagalog version of it in both Latin script and locally used by Bayan script is printed in 1953. In 1610, Tomas Pinpin, a Filipino writer-publisher who is sometimes referred as the Patriarch of Filipino printing, wrote his famous librong pag-aaral ng mga Tagalog ng wikang Kastila, which was meant to help Filipinos learn Spanish language.
The educational level during the Spanish period are: first, basic, which is comprised of 3 grade levels, namely entrada, ascenso, and termino. Second is secondary, and lastly is tertiary.
During the time, the aim of education were initially to teach Christianity because education was mostly run by the church. It is formal, vocational, and religious. In fact, they also taught us how to be literate, especially in writing and reading Spanish. Doctrina Christiana was the first book printed in the Philippines in about 1590 to 1592, written in Baybayin in the Latin script.
Our methods for banking concepts are memorization, dictation, and even theater presentation. Our curriculum was organized per subjects such as medicine, theology, philosophy, and humanities, Christian doctrine, values, mathematics, agriculture, and Spanish history.
As a 21st century student and learner, I realized that everything happens for a reason. History is indeed an interesting event in our lives, for we can witness the footprints from the past. Imagine, even though our independence during Spanish colonization were tragically stolen from us, we cannot deny facts that they contributed a constructed society with a more organized way of living. They introduced Christianity, and they started to build schools, which are some of these educational institutions are currently well known for their different respective fields. Education, as everyone says, is the primary vehicle to learn, to be functional in our society, and to achieve our dreams in life.
Indeed, all the positive and negative situations and experiences of education that happened in the Spanish period and other periods brought transformation and opportunities that help us to surpass the problem of educational welfare in our country. Its development and progress in the educational system and curriculum produce a society with knowledgeable, skilled, competitive, and productive citizens that contribute in creating a continuous learning environment for the great future of the next generations. We can say that education is still a great investment that we can bestow to our children. Like what Elizabeth Warren said and quote, "Education is the better foundation for the better future."
Te has preguntado alguna vez por qué has así el título de nuestra documental? I am Lhara and this is